This month marks the 10-year anniversary for my wife Benedicta in international ministry. In this video, we'll share an interview I did with her about her first attempt to travel and minister outside her home nation of Nigeria. That initial trip was challenged by the evil one in every possible way, and she almost never made it out of the country. But God's grace prevailed. The story's funny now, but at the time it wasn't funny at all. Well, we are in September 2018, and there's something special really about this whole year, and what is that?
Something special about September 2018. It gives me and us the Big 10.
The big 10 years anniversary when you first began to do international ministry.
Right.
Now, really, this whole year has been a year of 10-year anniversaries. It's our 10-year anniversary for being married.
Right.
As well as the first trip to India, which we're going to talk about, and then the first trip to Africa. All of that happened in 2008, so here we are 10 years later.
Right.
And we just want to kind of go down memory lane a little bit.
Okay.
But, I mentioned, this is 10 years international ministry for you. But it's not 10 years ministry. You were doing ministry even before you knew me. What kind of ministry were you doing in Nigeria before you even got to know me?
It was evangelical ministry, and I was working with local pastors.
Seemed like you were involved in church building quite a bit, right?
Right, church building and helping the pastors build their new churches when they start.
Yeah.
And sometimes, way back I joined big ministries as well.
Yeah, and to me, the most interesting thing you did in ministry before I got to know you is you told me about your bus ministry. To me, I was fascinated by that. Number one, in personal situations, you seem kind of shy, but you couldn't be shy and do that kind of a ministry. Tell us a little bit about the bus ministry you did.
The bus ministry came up because I knew that I was called to do the work of God, and as a little girl, I didn't know really how to go about it, and I had to start from somewhere.
Sure.
And being in the bigger ministries in Nigeria, whereby they make the flyers available, the tracts and everything.
Yeah.
So and during the meeting, during the programs, church programs, they will want us to go share them. So I'll share with the local people that I live in my street and everywhere, and I will take more because each time any bus goes down to Victoria Island or Ikeja from Ogba, where we were, there is a big bus that carry, a lot of people. So I'll get into the bus. When you say a big bus,
probably not like the school buses that we Americans know about.
No, it's like a coaster bus.
Kind of a van almost, really?
Yeah,
that would hold, what, maybe 8, 10 people, something like that?
Yeah, there are some 8, 10, 15 people. There are some that 35, 40 people.
So you got in these buses not because you needed to take transportation somewhere, but you got in them for the purpose of evangelism, right?
Sometimes it's it's because I just want to preach to people.
Yeah.
And sometimes it will be when I will be going to Victoria Island, to buy things, and then I will use that medium to preach to people in the bus.
Okay, so in some cases, you just happened to be, you needed to ride the bus. You figured, why just sit there
and waste the whole time?
And waste the whole time. So tell us exactly what you would do, this bus evangelism. You get on the bus, then what happens?
Yeah, I get on the bus. Everybody, get into the bus, and the bus moves.
Yeah.
And the moment the bus moves, I will let the conductor, know that I want to share the word of God with everybody in the bus, which they respect God. They'll be like, it's all right.
You tell the driver or the conductor.
I'll tell the conductor will tell the driver.
You want to get up and share. Did they ever turn you down, or did they normally?
No, they never turned me down.
They never They always allowed you to get up and preach the gospel or share the gospel.
Sometimes I don't get up. Sometimes I will just be on my seat.
Okay, sometimes
and,
you just sit and
speak louder. And sometimes if I'll get up and stand and, preach. And many were really blessed through it.
Yeah, so these people had no choice. They couldn't go anywhere. They had to pretty much listen to you.
Right.
Were they ever rude, or were they usually pretty polite?
They were polite. They were calm, listening. And, at the end of my ministration, I'll ask them to, if you want to give your life to Christ, raise up your hand. Quite a few will raise up their hands, and
so
I'll pray for them.
They would say, yes, I want to give my life to Jesus. Wow, that's awesome.
And one day like that, I took a shorter version of the bus from Ogba to Ikeja.
Okay.
I preached in the bus.
Yeah.
And that was like, one of the days I was like, thank you, God. Like, what I have been laboring, is touching someone. So when we got out of the bus, one lady came to me. I was like, thank you very much. You just blessed me this morning. Like somebody just came out from the house with all kinds of trouble, burdens, and all of that. I annoyed or something, and the word of God just touched, her heart, and she was like, that she has to go to work with that word today. That I just blessed her.
Wow, that's great. Now you were in your 20s at this time, right? What, mid-20s, early 20s, just throughout your 20s?
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
Right.
So it must have been an unusual sight. Number one, you're tall, you look like a model, and you get up and start preaching, or you sit down and preach,
right?
And yet people gave their lives to Jesus, and so and there weren't really a lot of doors open for you, so this was like something you knew you could do.
Yeah, that was my platform I created.
That was your platform. Right. All right, well, we don't want to get too distracted with that, but we want to get on to our 10 years anniversary. So we could talk a lot about how we met, how we got married, but we're going to skip over that because that's another story for another day.
Yes.
But we did get married in May 2008, so again, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary this year. Right. But in September, and here we are, September 2018, but in September 2008 is when you had your first chance to travel with me.
Right.
Do you remember when I let you know that you were going to be going to India?
It was surprise. I mean, the greatest surprise of my life, it must not be the greatest surprise. The greatest surprise of my life was when you came to Nigeria and, got interested in my life, and then we got to know each other. Boom, shaka, marriage is coming up. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on, God? Another surprise was when you called me after we got married, and then you were like, God has called you to go, to the east, west, north, and south.
Right.
And, share and preach the gospel and share your testimonies. I said yes. And you were like, okay, pack your things, you're going with me.
Yeah.
And you are I'm going to India. You said you were going to India.
Right.
And then you were like, India is in the east. So pack your things, you're going with me, you're starting from the east.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, now here's the situation for the people that don't really understand how this all works. We were married in May.
Right.
But when you get married to someone that's not from America, and I think particularly from Nigeria, maybe, I'm not sure, your new wife cannot just come and live with you. So you were still living in Nigeria. I was, of course, in America, and we were talking every day over the phone, but we couldn't live together at that time. And so we got married, had our honeymoon, and off I went back to America.
Yeah.
So that was really the first time I saw you since we had got married.
Yes.
But I thought, okay, and it ended up taking us over a year for you to come to America. But I thought, well, you can go from Nigeria to India. I can go from America to India. We can meet up there.
Right.
And we can minister together. I knew I had heard you speak at right around the time of our wedding. I knew you could speak. So I thought, well, maybe we can find a little something for this young lady, this beautiful wife of mine to do. So I asked if you could go, and neither you nor I realized how hard it was going to be for us to do that. I think we were both kind of naive. I had traveled a lot, but I had never tried to pull this off with, having an African wife that we're both going to try to go from our respective places and get there. So let me just tell you a little bit about how it happened from my perspective, then we'll pick up from your perspective. Right. What we decided was we would meet together in Mumbai, India. We were going to actually do ministry in Port Blair, and which is an island off the coast of India on the other side of Mumbai. So we were to fly into Mumbai, you from Nigeria, me from America. We'd meet up there, would fly together across India to the other side, land in Chennai, and then get a flight to Port Blair. That was the plan.
Yes. We planned it whole thing.
We planned it well, but plans don't always work out.
Oh, God.
And it seems like whenever you do something new and fresh in Christ, the devil will be right there to challenge you and make it as hard as he knows how.
He tried to shatter the whole plan.
He tried to challenge us big time. So that was the great plan. And of course, I'd been traveling internationally and ministering for several years, but we never tried this thing. So anyway, that was the plan. We got the tickets. You got your visa. Right. I got my visa. And so I flew over to Mumbai as planned. No problems there. And I ended up locating myself just outside the baggage area in the airport in Mumbai, where I knew you would land. Right. You'd come to get your bags there, and then I would see my lovely Nigerian wife picking up her bags and come, and I'd hug you, and you'd hug me, and we'd be all excited we'd be together. But when it was time for your flight to land, there was indeed a flight landed, but there was no tall, beautiful African lady on that flight. You know, I'm looking, you know, she has to be tall, has to be black, has to be beautiful, and there was none that fit that.
My luggage was in that plane.
Your luggage was there. Okay, well, I didn't even know that. Anyway, you weren't there.
Yep.
So I'm thinking, wow, this isn't good. And I thought, okay, maybe the flight was delayed. Maybe this is not the right flight. It was, but I thought maybe this is not the right flight. So I thought, next flight. And next flight comes along sometime later. You're not there. Next flight, you're not there. I stayed up all night watching flight after flight after flight.
Oh my gosh, that really touched my heart.
The people going, get their bags, coming out, and I'm just getting more and more depressed. You know, where is my wife? And I didn't have a phone, and I didn't have any really good way of contacting you. Finally, I ended up calling John. But anyway, there I am in Mumbai waiting for you, and you haven't shown up. Now, that's my perspective. Tell us from your perspective what was going on there at the airport in Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, a lot was going on, really, a lot. I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I've never traveled outside Nigeria in my life.
Right.
And even, you know, I never knew where Cotonou and Nigeria border or Cameroon border or anywhere, you know.
You were just a Nigerian girl, never been out of Nigeria.
Nigerian girl, you know, doing my thing in Lagos, and all of a sudden God opened this international door in my life. I was like, okay, trying to figure the whole thing out. Finally, with your help, you know, buying the ticket and getting everything together for me, I packed my bag.
Right.
Off I went to the airport, only for me to, you know, get there, and then that was a surprise.
Now tell us what the surprise was. Nobody knows what the surprise was. What was the surprise?
The surprise was like immigration never wanted me to get out of Nigeria.
Yeah, you go there assuming, you know, I've got my ticket, you know, I've got my reservation.
Right.
I'll show them my itinerary. They'll put me on the plane. Off I go.
Off I go.
Instead, what does somebody come along and say to you?
Yeah, you know, while we were really, you know, getting on the line, and they were like, we were like, you know, heading down to where they were going to board us.
Yeah.
And getting through immigration, security, and all of that, they asked me, you know, where are you going to? Them like, I'm going to India. And then they took one look at the passport, knowing that it's a Virgin passport. This girl has never, you know, gone anywhere in her life.
Yeah.
Okay, they're like, okay, can you come with us, please? I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding
That's what
me.
you never want to hear at an airport. Can you come with me, please?
Please. I'm like, okay, what did I do?
Yeah.
I know I'm not carrying anything contraband or, you know, try to smuggle anything. I never done that in my life. So why are they, you know, calling me out of my line right now? And that really bothered me. But I followed him, you know. When we got, you know, to the office, he started asking me questions. How much do you have in your hand as you're traveling? I'm like, I have 7,000 naira.
Which wouldn't have been a whole lot of money.
Which wouldn't have been
Because I was going to cover all your expenses and the hotel and the food, and, you know, so you didn't have a lot of money. And 7,000 sounds like a lot, but Nigerian naira, not very much.
And I was about to meet you at the Mumbai. You were, like you said, cover all my expenses. And so he was like, look at me like that. Was like, what are you talking about? Stay there. And then he went away and came back with, some papers and started writing a whole lot and asking me so many questions and was writing them down. And then he was like, asked me to come with him again. And then we went to a second office. Inside there, they just left me alone with a bunch of people sitting there. And I was like calculating my time.
Time is passing.
Time is going. I'm like, when he came back, I was like, sir, my plane is about to leave. I had to get to India.
Yeah.
He was like, who are you going to meet in India? I'm like, my husband is in India, in Mumbai, waiting for me. He came all the way from America.
Right.
He thought I was lying or something.
Yeah.
And then he never believed me. And then by the time I pressurized a little bit, he was like, hey, Missy, sit there. So nobody told you that anybody that gets into this room doesn't travel anymore? And that, struck my head like, boom. I'm like, what?
That was like a lightning bolt hit you. You go to this room, you're not traveling.
You're not traveling again.
All your hopes, all your dreams of this big, exciting India trip.
India was just on my feet. And then he said I should sit. I got up. I'm like, sir, no, I'm not sitting. Like, what do you really want from me? He's like, if you want to travel, you have to have some money in your hand to cover all your expenses over there. I'm like, explain the whole thing all over. My husband is at the Mumbai waiting for me. He's gonna cover all my expenses. He never wanted to hear that. He took my passport, took my boarding pass and everything, and disappeared.
And the long and short of it was that day you had to turn around and go back to your home.
Because it was like all the way to evening.
How did you feel on the way back to your home?
Sad, miserable.
But again, it's not like, I didn't carry my phone. It wouldn't have worked in India. So we didn't have any real way of communicating. We found a way by contacting,
I think the second day,
our Indian friend.
The second day, early in the morning, I went back there and, tried to find the man. He was inside on the duty, and then I went back to the office where they left me the previous day, and I tried to communicate with someone.
Right.
Everybody there were like not even wanting to hear what I'm gonna say or what I'm saying. They were like, unless you have the money in hand that you're gonna cover your expenses over there, you're not leaving the country. I'm like, okay. And
the strange thing is you ended up traveling with me a number of times after that. Yeah. And they never asked you about anything. That. I mean, I don't know for sure. It kind of sounds to me like somebody was wanting a bribe. Well, but they held you there for not just one day.
3 days.
3 days they held you back. Now here I am from my side. And finally, I called the host in India, and you had his number, and you had called him, so we found out what was going on.
Yeah, I knew that you were waiting, and I had to communicate. I called John, and John was like, what is going on? I'm like, tell Dennis that, they're holding me at the airport. I've not been able to leave the country yet. I'm still in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, that he will tell you. And I thought that he told you immediately. And then after some time...
Well, it took me a while to contact him.
Right, okay.
But my dilemma was this, even after I found out from John, do I stay in Mumbai and wait for you? Because the conference was going to start in in like a day or two. I forget the exact amount of time, but it wasn't going to be long. I couldn't hang around very long there if I was going to do the conference.
Right.
So it was like, do I stay another day and take a chance? Because I was scared to death for you to land in Mumbai. First time you'd ever traveled internationally, and I'm not there, and you're going to have to make your way across India, fly to the other side, and then fly on to Port Blair where we were going to do the meetings. But finally, I thought, I have no other choice.
Yeah.
And I told John, because he had told me that there was an issue with money. They were wanting to make sure you had plenty of money before you left.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, she's going to end up, you were borrowing some money and stuff, so I thought she's going to end up having some money. So I made arrangements for you to buy your own ticket and told you, through John to do that. I flew on. I ended up in Chennai. Again, the same deal. I'm calling John hoping to hear that you've got a breakthrough and you're on your way. But that was like day 2. You still didn't have that breakthrough. And so I'm at the same dilemma there in Chennai on the other side of India. It's like, do I stay here and wait or do I go on? But again, the conference was about to start and it was like, I've just got to go on.
Yeah.
So now you're going to have to fly to Chennai, then fly to Mumbai, then fly to the other side of India to Chennai, and then fly on to Port Blair. So to make a long story short about you finally being able to leave, the final day, you had come up with some money and they had more or less told you could do it, but they were in no hurry and there was a big meeting going on, all the big shots, and they were telling you, well, you'll have to wait. Tell us what happened at that point that finally got you on your way to India.
These past 2 days, they've been telling me, their boss, wasn't around in the office. I had to wait until their boss shows up. Yeah. And again, I had to go and get the money that I have to go out of the country with. So what I did was to, go to my friends. I went back to town, got to my friends and explained things. So they finally gave me some money. I changed it into dollars. Yeah. And then I came up, to airport the third day. And then day 3, I went there, okay, I have this money. Can I have my passport now so that I can go? No. They were like, this boy got a big table, blocked the road, that their boss and, all the big shots, all the bigger officials in Nigeria came together and they're having a meeting inside and I shouldn't make noise. I should just go and come back by 4.
Which would have meant you would have missed your flight one more day.
My flight one more day, and that did it for me. I just broke up. Right, another side of me came out. I'm like, you better go and call your boss out right here, right now, and give me my passport, or there is no meeting in there.
And you weren't just whispering this either.
No, I was screaming on top of my voice. I'm like, y'all have heard me here the first day, second day, this is the third day, and they're still telling me to go and come back 4. And, I am not doing that. I was like shouting on top of my voice. The boss and all the big shots inside the office were hearing me. I'm like, yeah, they are having their own meeting. I have my own meeting with God. I have a meeting I was supposed to attend with my husband all the way from America. He came to India, and then we are supposed to go, and people are waiting there, to, have us share with them, and I am here. And you are telling me your boss is having a meeting. What kind of meeting is that? I was like all over the place.
You interrupted their meeting. You were screaming so loudly. Right. They had to come out and see what in the world was going on.
Bunch of them rushed out like, what is going on? They've never had maybe anybody interrupt them.
A hot Nigerian lady can be someone to deal with.
Right. I had to get them all out. They were like, what is going on? I'm like, okay, that must be the boss. And all these other ones, okay, y'all are having a meeting. Good, welcome. And, I'm like, okay. He said, she wants her passport. He was like, you didn't tell her to come by 4? I'm like, excuse me, sir. So I am not coming by 4. You see, by that 4 o'clock, my plane must have gone. I am going to India for 3 good days. This is the 3rd day. They're holding me here for no reason. I am not carrying anything that, that is illegal. They asked me to bring money, and then I have the money. That got him scared. Nobody asked you to bring money. I'm like, well... So I'm like,
like there's something a little fishy about that whole deal.
Fishy about the whole thing. And then I'm like, okay, the thing is like, he was like patient and listening to me. I laid all my complaints down. Yeah. By the time he, had every story I got, he was like, go and give her passport. I'm like, thank you.
So, wow. And so it finally worked for you. Mm-hmm. 3rd day, you're off. And by this time, I'm doing the meeting.
Right.
And, it's a sad thing. I mean, I know what's going on. We're both calling our host in India, so we're communicating through him. And so I know what's happening. Right. But it was just sad. Here's my new wife. I married her a few months back, and I haven't seen her, in several months, and now she's not here. But I finally found out you were on your way, so that was a relief. So here you are flying to India, strange nation, never been international before. And then I wasn't there, so you're going to have to buy a ticket, fly across the other side to India. Right. And by then I had left that city, Chennai, as well. I was in Port Blair. Right. So, I mean, a lot of women would be kind of scared, especially if they'd never traveled internationally, and you can sometimes be timid about some things, but you were pretty brave to do all that.
Yeah, I know. I had to be brave, because this is like an assignment that have been given to me, and I just had to carry it on. And I came out from their office and then tried to, walk my way around the whole thing and ask questions, what next I should do.
Yeah.
Somebody put me through, and that was how I got into the plane.
Right.
And luckily for me, I had somebody from my tribe, who was in the plane.
An Igbo from Nigeria.
Right. And, I was able to ask him, if I get to Mumbai,
right,
I will be going to Chennai. What do I do?
One funny story from your flight to India is that they were serving meals, of course. Right. Locally, they don't serve meals, when you fly in America, but when you fly internationally, you get meals.
Okay.
So they're serving meals, and they come to you and ask you, what you would like. They usually have a choice of vegetarian or pasta or chicken or whatever. And what do you tell them?
I told them, no, I don't want, I didn't really, I thought they were selling the food.
Yeah.
And because all my life in Lagos, any cup of water, you buy it. Anything you want, you pay for everything.
So you are assuming that all these people that were getting these meals were paying for it, and you didn't want to spend any money on meals.
I had, some money with me, but I didn't want to spend it. I'm like, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to, buy the food. So they came, ask everybody, rice, chicken, or whatever they got, and then serve the whole people on my seat, and then went to the other side and served them, and then moved on. I'm like, okay.
So everybody else is eating, enjoying their meal, and you're just sitting and kind of watching everybody else
watching
eat.
Everybody. So that boy from my tribe that was sitting at the middle seat looked at my side and was like, "You are not eating?" I'm like, "No, I'm not eating. I don't really have the money to buy the food. I don't want to spend the money I have because I may really want to spend some money when I get to, the Mumbai. When I get to Mumbai, buying tickets and all of that."
Yeah.
He said, "No, the food, is complimentary. You've already paid for it when you paid for your flight ticket." I'm like, I didn't pay for my flight ticket. My husband paid for my flight tickets from America. He said it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Everything is included in that ticket, your meal, your drinks, and everything. So whatever comes around you they're serving, feel free to, eat with everybody.
You had been fasting for no reason.
I've been fasting for no reason. I'm like, oh, if that is the case, excuse me, sister, can I have my food now? So she came back and served me. So that was how I got my meal. If not, it would have been like no food in the plane.
Oh, wow. So you landed at Mumbai, you managed to get a ticket, you flew across to Chennai.
Yeah.
And the pastor where I was in Port Blair had a relative in the Chennai area, so you ended up staying overnight with him.
Yes.
The next morning he brings you to the airport, and you're going to make that final little short flight to the island of Port Blair where I'm doing this conference, actually finishing up the conference by that point.
Yeah.
And you fly there, but it's kind of a rainy day, and tell us what happens as you get close to Port Blair.
Well, as I was getting close to Port Blair, still in Chennai, with this family.
No, I'm talking about on the flight. You
said the flight going to Port Blair?
As you get to Port Blair on your first flight there.
Okay, on my first flight to Port Blair, we were in the air, flying down to Port Blair.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the pilots got information that no plane was landing. And that it was really raining heavily over there in Port Blair, that the airport was flooded.
Right.
So they were not allowing any plane to land. And then he said the pilot now made an announcement to everybody, trying to let everybody know that the flight was going to turn around.
Flight is going to turn around.
Right. So, I was like, here we go again. I have,
and you're headed right back to Chennai.
And the plane turned around immediately, headed back to Chennai.
It seemed like everything the devil could do to keep us apart, he was doing.
Right.
So you end up, and we had to call the family you'd stayed with.
The family again, they came.
They came, they picked you up, kept you another night.
Right.
Finally, that next day, and I had gone to the airport that first day, and looked at it, and it was like almost knee-deep water over the runway. So it was like, so what my thought was, if it's this deep today,
right,
how's it going to drain where a plane can land tomorrow? I knew you couldn't possibly land that day, but I was hoping you could come tomorrow. But then I'm like, well, how could a plane even land tomorrow?
Right.
But it drained, and that night I was praying, Lord, hold off the rain. Right. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I heard a little patter of some rain. I go, oh no, But
not again.
But you made it.
Yeah, I made it.
And you ended up there. The conference was over by the time you got there. It was just like a 2-day weekend type conference. Right. So it was over, but at least you made it. Although, as I'm waiting for you to come out of the airport in Port Blair, you're the very last person to come through the doors. So, I'm still, depressed and thinking she didn't make it. She's not on the plane. But you were just a little bit slow.
Yeah, what happened was that, as we came out of the plane, I didn't know that I was supposed to fill up, some paperwork, and everybody got theirs. And then getting to the immigration person, they were like requesting for the paper from me. I didn't have it. I'm like, okay, where am I gonna get? They were like, go back there.
So anyway, you get through that, and we're finally together. Yeah. And I had set aside a few days for us to just have like a little second honeymoon and enjoy and be tourists and go a few places.
Right.
So we had a nice time. They took us to eat at the different pastors' houses each night, and we enjoyed that. Enjoyed being with them. But there was one other surprise for you. This one really was a good surprise, but at the time, I'm not sure if you thought that. And that is that on the Sunday evening, and I think you just gotten there the day before, the evening before, but anyway, on the Sunday evening, they said, well, we'd like your wife to share, since she didn't get to participate in the conference at all, we're going to have a small Sunday evening service, and we'd like for her to preach. So that sounded good to me, and I told you, but you went into shock almost because you weren't really expecting that.
Right. I wasn't expecting that because I didn't prepare to, preach or minister. I thought that I was going for, honeymoon number 2 in India. And, being with you and kind of move around, see sights, and watch you preach, and then when it's over, I'll go.
Yeah.
But I got there, all the hassles I've been through on the road, getting there Saturday, and by Sunday, you were like, after service, when we were coming back, that they said they're gonna, gather people in the evening, 6 p.m. for me to come and preach. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God.
You remember the exact time? It was 6 p.m.?
Yes.
Well, you've got a good memory. I could never have guessed what the time was. But yeah, you find out after service, you're going to preach that evening. And total shock.
Total shock.
And what I remember throughout that afternoon was I was still suffering from jet lag, even though I'd been there a few days.
Yes.
I was still suffering from jet lag. So in that afternoon, I went to sleep, but you didn't. What were you doing?
I was, after, the shock, I had to calm down and pray and ask God to just direct me on what to share and how to share it. Yeah. And, my spirits just ministered to me, and I got out pen and paper, and everything that was coming into my heart and my head and everything, I was just writing them down. And while you were napping, I was like busy writing. That was how I got, sermon made. To
this day, I don't know how you managed to keep yourself awake, because I was so tired, and I know you were tired as well. You were going through jet lag. And I would kind of wake up from my nap for just a second or two, and I'd look across the bed, and there you are sitting up, writing down and flipping through your Bible and stuff and getting ready. So, I mean, you took it very seriously, which is a good thing, Ministers should take ministry seriously. But I'm like, oh, how can she even stay awake? And then I'd fall back to sleep.
Right.
But they took us there, and it was a small gathering, typical Indian church gathering. Mm-hmm. And you preached. It was the first time you'd preached through an interpreter, right?
Yes, first time I preached with interpreter, and the first interpreter I didn't really understand, accent and not too much English.
The pastor named Raja, he replaced him, right?
Yeah,
After
Pastor
just a few
Raja,
minutes.
Right.
And one thing I remember about that is normally when you're preaching with an interpreter, the interpreter's kind of staring at the audience, and he's hearing you, but he's not really looking at you. But Pastor Raja was having a bit of trouble with your Nigerian accent. So when you'd be speaking, he'd be staring right at you, wanting to make sure he got every word. But it went well, and you basically shared the gospel, right?
Right. Many, some came out and gave their life to Christ for the first time, internationally, and I was pleased, and God was pleased.
It was a great start. It was your first international ministry.
Right.
And people came forward to give their lives to Jesus, came forward for prayer. It wasn't a big gathering, but out of that small gathering, we had quite a big response. Right. And it was exciting. How'd you feel after it was all over?
I felt really great and relieved, and I thanking God. Oh, it's over, God. It was like
so that was 10 years ago in September.
Right.
Here we are 10 years later.
10 years.
And you're not a novice anymore. You've been ministering, every year, and several times a year we go out to do these missions.
Right.
We went actually to Kenya within a couple months of that time, and you did some more ministry.
In Mombasa.
I wish we had recorded your sermon that Sunday evening, but we didn't. So we've got pictures, we don't have video. Now in Mombasa, we do have some recordings.
In Vizag, we went from Port Blair to Vizag.
Yes.
In Vizag, there were, a lot of pictures you took of me sharing.
A lot of pictures, right. And the Indian ladies fell in love with you. It seemed like everywhere you went, they just clustered around you, spoiled you, wanted to give you clothes, and
gave me everything.
And it's kind of funny. I've got a picture of you with a bunch of Indian ladies, kind of in almost like a lineup.
Yeah.
And you're like twice as tall as them.
Okay, tell me about it.
They're all so short, and you were so tall. It was quite amazing. But one thing you've always loved about India was the clothes, and of course you're wearing Indian clothes today.
Right. But since I'm talking about them, they're my people. I love them.
Always loved, and they bought you Indian clothes, and practically every time we've been to India, you've managed to get some more.
Yeah.
So it was a great start. You had some real challenges, but by the time we were done, you enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah,
we did go on to a second city. You shared your testimony, and then I preached, and we had a good time there. And it was you just getting started, getting your feet wet. And one other thing we'll mention as we wrap this up that I found interesting, and at the time I didn't know what was going on. Mm-hmm. But as the thing had wrapped up and we were at the airport, and of course you had to fly back to Nigeria, and I would fly to America because we still didn't have permission for you to come over to America. You didn't have your American visa yet.
Right. And
you got really quiet there during part of that time as we were at the airport. And I wasn't used to that because, we hadn't been married that long, and quiet usually means somebody's mad.
Okay.
But I didn't know what you'd be mad about. I thought, did I offend her? Why is she upset? She's hardly saying anything. It was only later, quite a bit later, that I found out why you were so quiet. Tell us why you were so quiet at that time.
I remember that, we were separating at that moment. I would be going, back to Nigeria while you go back to, while you were about to go back to America. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're supposed to go together back to America. Why am I going back to Nigeria? I became, kind of upset inside me and moody, and then not talking too much, not saying too much. I'm like, yep.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
You didn't do anything wrong.
Well, I'm glad to know that.
Yeah.
But God took you safely home. You didn't have so many challenges getting back. It was getting out that you had the challenges.
No, getting back was easy.
But so we continued. A couple months later, we made plans to go out again. This time to Africa.
Yes.
So anyway, this was 10 years ago. You've done so many meetings. You've learned a lot. You're now so totally free in ministry. It took you a little while, although with the ladies, it didn't seem to take you any time at all. You always had a special gift to minister to ladies. And so anyway, you've been a blessing. And I've told you before, I'm convinced that there are people who have found eternal life because you've ministered with me. And had I gone alone, they wouldn't have found eternal life. They wouldn't have been saved, because God uses you. You have your gifts, I have mine. And He uses you and He uses me, and I believe we make a much better team together than we ever could if we tried to minister apart. So, I appreciate you, my love, and I appreciate
you too.
All the way you have supported me and been with me on all these missions. It's been a great 10 years, and we thank God for it.
We thank God for 10 good years.
Yep.
10.